Okay, so today we're going to work on practicing finding the equations of trig graphs. So this is kind of, I'm trying to think, this is like our second or third day of trig, and I want to make sure that you're comfortable with this. I think it's our second day of finding the formula. The one thing I want to make sure that you guys recognize is you have y equals f of theta. That means your x-axis is theta, and this is y. So when you get done, your formula should be in those variables. Not everything is y and x, and I just want you to be very conscious of that, okay? So the first thing I do is I write down looks like, because I'm asking for a formula. Then I write down amplitude, frequency, period, and midline. Okay? And I always look at the y-axis to see, because I always say sine starts at midline, cosine starts high. And this function looks like it's starting at what? It starts at -1, which is at the middle of this graph? Yeah, so it's starting at midline. So I'm going to come here and say, oh, this is starting at midline, so this looks like sine. And then I check and say, is it going up, then down? And it is, so it's a positive sign. It's not a negative sign. Negative sign means it's inverted. So let's kind of just do this again. So sine starts at midline, whatever the middle of the graph is, cosine starts high, meaning it starts up here, okay? So I know this looks like sine. Then this one actually tells us the midline, and what is the midline going to be? Y equals -1. Beautiful. So I always do the midline if I can figure it out. And if I don't know it, the work I can do is high plus my low. And I'm liking, oh, okay, my high looks like 1. And I could figure out, well, if this is my middle, I can know what my low is. And what would my low be? -2, right? All over 2. So it comes out to be -1. Or in this case, you can kind of just look at it. But lots of times I do high plus low divided by 2. Okay, so now I come up and do my amplitude. The amplitude, ready, is your high minus your midline. So my amplitude is 2. And remember, amplitude is never negative. So these are kind of important things. It's like, because I'm going to be shifting things all over again. So you should always do high minus midline for amplitude. And this is high plus low divided by 2. So I always do this first and then come up here, all right? Now it's a graph, so I'm going to do my period first. If it was an equation, I would do my frequency next. So I look at it and say, how long does it take me to see the entire curve? So it's starting in the middle, hits the middle, ends up in the middle. How long did it take me to see that? So I look at the x-axis and it took me how long? Pi. Equals 2 pi over my frequency. You can cross multiply or switch their places. So my frequency is going to be, switch the pi and the f, guys. Got 2 pi over pi is 2. So now I know my formula is, I got it all there, y equals, because that's what that is, my amplitude goes first, looks like sine, my frequency goes next, my variable goes next, which is theta, and my midline goes last. Yes, dear.
When you do the high plus low divided
Oh,
by 2,
must have been a 3. Sorry, must go down to 3, that's why. So this should be, yeah, it should be -3 down here. That's my mistake. Thank you, hon. You're right. You're right. But this one, in this case, I actually probably wouldn't do this because I kind of told you. But if they don't tell you, then you can do that. So you know what I'm saying? Are we good? All right, let's try another one. Ready? Looks like, because I want you guys to be good at this. Amplitude, frequency, period, midline. Okay? Sine starts at midline, cosine starts high. So you look at your y-axis right here, right? And I say, what is my function starting at? Well, the midline obviously is y equals 3, so I'm going to kind of stick that there. Is my function starting at the midline? No, so it's not sine or negative sine, okay? It's starting low. I never said that. So this must be what? Negative cosine because it's been inverted, right? See what I'm saying? So you kind of look at the y-axis and say, what's going on? Because I'm not going to give you any with shifts, I promise you, okay? So the amplitude, if the midline is 3, and this is the middle, so this is 0, this is 3, what do you think the high is going to be? 6, right? So I'm going to say high minus my midline, so my amplitude must be 3. Okay, so kind of like label everything. It's a graph, so I'm going to do my period first, then this is my equation. So my graph, the period, how long does it take me to see the whole thing? So it starts low, I follow it all the way here, ends here. Where does it end at? Everybody's a little nervous. 4. If this is halfway, doesn't that have to be 4? So my period is 4 equals 2 pi over my frequency, cross multiply or switch their places. 2 pi over 4 is pi over 2. And the other thing I want you to let you know, they're inverses of each other, period and frequency. So if your period has pi in it, your frequency won't, and vice versa. My period doesn't have pi in it, so my frequency will. Okay? So that's a cool thing. So now I'm going to say, all right, my equation is, remember we got theta, and this is, so I got y equals, what goes first? The what? The negative 3. Now, but here's the thing, amplitude's still just 3, guys, but because it's been inverted, that's what the negative does. Cosine goes next. My frequency goes next. My variable of my x-axis, which is theta in this case, plus 3. Kind of ran out of room. Question. Are we good? All right, let's try 3. So we're going to keep doing this to get really good and comfortable with this. All righty? So looks like amplitude, frequency, period, midline. Again, when you're looking at this, I'm not going to do a shift. You always look at your y-axis. Sine starts at midline, cosine starts high. What is this starting at? It's starting high, right? Because it's the middle's here, right? So if it's not starting in the middle, then this must be, and it's, so I know this is cosine. All right. First of all, you do your midline. Now this one they don't kind of tell you, so we're going to do high plus my low divided by 2, which equals y equals 0. And I actually come over here and do this and say, yep, that is the middle. Because sometimes people will subtract. I don't know why. Midline is average. It's like you add the 2. So I always double check. I'm like, good, my midline is y equals 0. My amplitude is high minus my midline, or 2. Now, I'm going to tell you, you need to show me this. If you do this every time, this is not hard, okay? Because I'm going to shift things all over the place. So there's that. My period, because it's a graph. That's the frequencies in the equation. So I'm going to kind of follow this. So I start up here high, end up here high. How long did it take for me to see one curve? 4, that's my period, which equals 2 pi over my frequency, or my frequency is, flip their places, pi over 2. So my equation is y equals 2 cosine, pi over 2, is it still theta? Yep. Anything else? Sometimes you'll see, and I just want you guys to know this, especially on these first 2 here, you'll see sometimes they'll write it like this, y equals 3 minus 3 cosine. You might want to write this down, pi over 2 theta. What they do is they throw the midline up front. And lots of times, especially if it's been inverted, you'll see them throw the midline up front. You can always throw it in the back and make sure you understand it, but you could see it written that way as well. Okay? All right, let's try number 4. Looks like, I hope this is helping, amplitude, frequency, period, midline. I'm going to give you a minute to see if you can start filling this in, and we'll talk about it. So people that tell me at home when they watch these, they fast forward to the slow parts. But I want to give you guys a chance to do it a little bit. So at home, you can try this too. So when I do these, I always look at my variable. I'm like, okay, this one's y's and x's, so I'm good. First of all, what does this look like? Anybody? Look at my y-axis. I'm starting low. Actually trace it. So it looks like what? Negative cosine. So I always look at that. And if you're not for sure, you can always tell sine because it starts in the middle of the graph. This is not in the middle, so you're good. Okay? Next thing I do is midline. So what work do I show to do the midline? It's y equals 0, but what work do you show? Negative 1 plus 1 divided by 2, or y equals 0. You need to show me that because I'm going to be shifting things all over the place. High plus low divided by 2. Amplitude is what? Minus midline. Because amplitude is it's a vertical stretch, but it's from the middle. So it's 1 minus 0 or 1. That's good. All right, what's next? I look at my period because it's a graph. How long did it take me to see that curve? 2 equals 2 pi over my frequency. Flip places. So my frequency is going to be pi. Yep. Now I'm happy about this one because I've got y equals negative, you don't need to show the 1, cosine. My variable is x. So that's all that formula is. Now the other two are on this page are transformations of this, but don't worry about it. I'd rather have you do this each time so I can shift this all over the place and we can kind of figure out what the formula is. So again, go ahead, stack and rack, and tell me what the formula is. I'll give you a few minutes for you here and at home. I'll set this up before I get going here. On this first one, if you're working on the second one, just wait a second. What does it look like, guys? Cosine. Midline is 6 plus 2 divided by 2, or y equals 4. Come on over here and actually do it. I always do that to make sure, okay, that's right. All right, the next thing is, my period is how long does it take me to see a whole curve, and it takes me to what? It's a little bit past 2, but let's call it 2 for the sake of it. Okay, so we're going to call the period 2 equals 2 pi over my frequency. And I promise you, if I give you a graph, it'll be very clear. So my frequency is, oh, I forgot the amplitude. It's pi. What's my amplitude? Is going to be high minus my midline, or 2. Sorry about that. So I usually do midline, then amplitude, and then I do the other part. So this one, they've got y's and x's again, so life is good. y equals 2 cosine what? Pi x plus 4. The other way you could see that is y equals 4 plus 2 cosine pi x, but I kind of like the midline at the end. Okay, I'll give you a few seconds to finish that last one. I hope this is helping. Okay, good. I just want you to be very good at this. I can give you any picture and you guys can tell me the formula. This last one looks like cosine. Do the midline next. 3 plus a negative 3 all over 2 is y equals 0, right? So it does look like this is halfway. Okay. Amplitude is 3 minus 0 or 3. Period is 8 equals 2 pi over my frequency. It's kind of in the mess here. So what's that going to be? Pi over 4? Yep. So y equals 3 cosine x. Does that help you? I hope. So I'm just going to stop the video here for a second so I can talk to you guys.